An honor to be here. And before I give you the history or tell you some of the history, I just have to tell you how I got involved. I was doing some research for my dissertation, and the court is in my dissertation. It's on black women in insurance in the South. And so I came here to the headquarters to look at some of their records. And Miss Moody, just as I was doing my research, and she just came and she said, we're trying to I really want to get a historical marker, and I've been working, and I have some information, and so I looked at her information, and I'm telling, now I know it really was just the Holy Spirit that made me say, well, I'll help you. I had so many things to do. But, this really is, just such a privilege for me, because I think it's just wonderful as a scholar when your work just doesn't sit on a library shelf, that it's like a living history, and people kind of get to understand it. So also much thanks to Deborah Blacklock Sloan, who I worked with on the application. And so some of the history's already been given, but I will try to make it quick. So the Grand Court of Calamity of Texas is one of the largest, longest-lived, and most successful African-American women-run fraternal insurance organizations in the United States. It was organized in the late 19th century at a time when African Americans were systematically relegated to second-class citizenship and women struggled for equal rights. The Grand Court was unique, and still is, because it is really one of the very few African American fraternals led and controlled by women. So secret societies like the Grand Court provided, not only the mutual aid and economic assistance for its members that people have talked about before, and also mentioned how it was one of the few spaces, especially outside of the church, where African Americans could exercise leadership and influence in their communities. But it's also led to the very development, really, of the African American economic, it led to the African American economic development, because it was out of these societies that we got our first banks, our first insurance companies, and that became the backbone of the black economy that flourished, and is still even in a way flourishing today. But especially back then, it was the secret societies like these that were so important to that. So they were important incubators for economic development, but most important, despite the fact that they were excluded from formal politics and the civic life and leadership, these societies, like the Calamity, stressed the moral and the cultural values that were really important to African Americans. So as we know, many of the popular fraternals, like the Knights of Pythias, organized female auxiliaries. So the Knights of Pythias organized the Supreme Court of the Independent Order of the Court of Calamity in May of 1883 at its national meeting in Vicksburg, Mississippi. So by the end of that year, 5 courts were organized, and there was one in Texas called the Pride of Galveston, but it quickly died out. So in the 1880s, early 1890s, Susie Norris of Dallas organized a court, and she had this dream of a grand court. But she needed 6 courts to do that. So she and another number of other really committed women went around the state, and they organized 6 more courts, and they were able to form the Grand Court of the Order of Calamity of Texas in 1897. And Hermione Court, number 4 in Houston, was among the original 7 Texas courts. And she was elected the Grand Counselor in 1898. So actually, the orders kind of struggled in its early years. It had a lot of competition with other, really popular orders. So when Miss Norris stepped down in 1902, America Key, who lived in Greenville, became the new counselor. And under her leadership, the order just exploded. She led, of course, from 1902 to 1925. And by 1920, I could say that the Grand Court was the largest state court in the United States. So Key, she modernized the Calampians' insurance business. She was the one who obtained the state permits to conduct insurance. She insisted, she asserted the court's independence from the Pythians. The court's motto, of course, is fidelity, harmony, and well, I have charity, but no. And in the early 20th century, it attracted women from a broad range of economic backgrounds. You had field workers, domestics, teachers, professionals, businesswomen, all were attracted to the message of the Corinthians. And it was really one of the only places, one of the very few places where women could, black women could work in professional, white-collar office jobs. So in the first decade, the state, of course, saw the success of orders like the Grand Calanthi, and of course they kind of attacked these symbols of black economic independence with stricter regulations, but the Grand Court rose above. So while other orders just disappeared, the Grand Court continued to persevere, and that was in part because of the leadership of the Grand Witty Counselors and the Grand Secretary Treasurers at that time. So I'm going to just go ahead a little bit. The investment strategy of Grand Witty Counselor McPherson and Davis up from the 30s to the 40s helped the Calanthians survive the Great Depression. So while thousands of other fraternal companies and insurance companies were failing, the court continued to operate profitably. They had more than $500,000 in assets, and that is in 1930 dollars. And they also made loans to members, and those loans helped members save their homes from being foreclosed on. They created a relief fund that provided for members of the community, and the Grand Court was also civically active. So it was during those years that the Calanthis, led by their soror, Lulu White, they canvassed neighborhoods in support of the NAACP's Grovey case, which they were looking to the Grovey case to be a test case to challenge the white primary. And then during World War II, the Grand Court purchased more than $100,000 in war bonds, and that is in 1940 dollars. And after the war, they started to make mortgage loans. They developed a modern automated office system, and they operated an employment service. And in 1948, of course, they built this wonderful headquarters here on Dowling Street. And at the time of its construction, it was the only modern building financed and managed by African American women in the world. So, in 1951, the Grand Court originated and completed the first federal home loan by an African American organization, male or female, in the South. By 1955, the court had over $1 million in assets, and that's in 1955 dollars, and 25,000 members. So for more than 2 decades, this headquarters was a vital center of business, community, religious, and civic activities in Houston's 3rd Ward. They leased space to businesses. Many of the churches here got their genesis in the free meeting rooms right here at the Grand Court. And throughout the late 20th century, they continued to provide community services in addition to their benefits, and in addition to continue working with the NAACP. By the 1950s, it was the first African American fraternal, male or female, to join the Texas Fraternal Congress, which had for a century discriminated against African Americans. But, of course, by the 1950s, they could not, help but acknowledge the success of the order. In the 60s and 70s, it worked closely with the local NAACP. In the 1970s, it operated a home for juvenile boys called the House of Bees. And even up to the mid-1990s, that they helped operate this house under the name of the Progressive Adolescent Learning Services. They, in the 90s, they assisted with the city's homeless efforts. So the Grand Court, in my conclusion, continues to confidently make its way into the 21st century. Calanthis volunteer their time and raise money for local charities and for needy families and children, especially here in the Houston area. It offers college scholarships, and it organizes activities for young people who, of course, are our future. So the Harris County Historical Society designated the headquarters a county historical marker in 2011, and the state designated it a historical landmark in 2012. So the cornerstone of the Grand Court headquarters states that it is dedicated to Negro womanhood. The Grand Court reflects the difficult but inspiring history of African American women, and it remains a vibrant, living testimony to their determination, their generosity, and their unwavering faith in God. And that lies not just at the heart of the African American experience, but really it is the lifeblood of the American experience. And thank you so very much.